Hello everybody and welcome back to another video on the Durham Student YouTube channel. I'm Karina and I am currently on a placement year with Johnson & Johnson, and I'm going to today tell you a bit about some tips that I picked up along the way when applying for my placement, and this covers all things from kind of the elements of the actual application like the CV and the cover letter to what sort of events to attend and just any other random bits I picked up. My first tip, and the first thing that you really should do when you start your placement application journey, is to sort out your CV. So you need to include a variety of things on your CV, and depending on how much work experience you've previously done or the academic things you've involved in, you might have different kind of proportions in different areas, but this largely needs to focus on selling you in as few words as possible. Everything you need to put on there has to be really concise. So the areas you want to cover are, first, your contact information, followed by a sort of summary of who you are and what you're looking for. For example, I am a marketing student at Durham University seeking a placement, etc, etc. The next area to include, or at least the next area I have on my CV, is a summary of my education. As a student, the biggest thing you're probably going to have done so far is your education and not any sort of work. So you put your degree on there with your predicted grade or your first year grade. You would put on your A-levels or whatever sort of high school diploma you did, and then GCSEs as well if you did that. Then the next section you want to include is your experience. So this is any part-time jobs, internships that you've had, and you want to give a couple of bullet points of what each of these was. It's very brief, but just a little bit of information here. And then finally, you want to add in any specific skills you have, for example, computer skills, language skills, etc., and any extracurricular activities that are notable. For example, for me, I did dance exams from the ages of 3 to 18, so it's quite a big commitment, and there are like various skills that can demonstrate. So for example, if you've done music exams or something like that, or DAV, for example, that might be something you want to include. But for all of this, once you've done this, you can then get someone from the careers team to check this over. And the careers team in Durham offer CV drop-in sessions. I imagine they're running those online this year, but they can check over your CV, and they really helped me just go through, prioritise whether there was anything I needed to rearrange, anything I could summarise a bit, stuff that actually wasn't necessarily worthwhile putting on, or stuff that was worth adding. So that can be really helpful. Once you have your CV ready, the next thing you want to set up is your LinkedIn profile. This is really crucial because a lot of application forms actually ask you to put your LinkedIn, like your link to your profile basically. And it won't necessarily be something you've had set up before, but it's something that if you don't, you should have set up now. And if you have already set it up, make sure it's optimized, because a lot of firms will actually look at your LinkedIn profile for extra information. And the benefit that your LinkedIn profile has over your CV is that you can kind of post about other things you've done. So for example, for me, last year, I posted about some of the most interesting videos I created for the Durham student, the ones I was most proud of, when I helped out at the careers fair to represent Enterprise, who I did an internship with last year. Things like this that you wouldn't put on your CV, but that show kind of breadth of experience, as well as since then I've put on my grades, awards that I've received, that kind of thing. And it just shows kind of a bit more breadth of your personality and your experiences. And a really interesting fact that I found on Rate My Placement about your LinkedIn profile is that actually, if you add 5 skills to your LinkedIn profile, you will get 17 times more profile views. So would definitely recommend you go and add on some skills, and you can get people to endorse these skills as well. So for example, if like one of your lecturers endorsed you having these skills, that would kind of improve the credibility of that as well. The next top tip I have is, once you have these elements set up, often the applications give you an optional space to add a cover letter. If it says you have an option to add a cover letter, add it, because other people will, and if you don't, you are losing out already and you're on a back foot. And this cover letter needs to cover a number of things. Firstly, you need to just put a bit of a kind of introduction to yourself, and then it needs to start with, why are you interested in this specific company? So when I applied for Johnson & Johnson, why Johnson & Johnson specifically and not any other firm? What is it about that firm that particularly attracts you? And here you can consider company values, if that's something you align with, the particular sector, if that's something you have a particular interest in, but you need to demonstrate why that company. The next paragraph should be why that specific role. So is there something that stands out about that role? And you need to kind of pick out, why do you particularly want that role in that company? Again, this is really personalized to the company because that allows you to form a greater connection with them. And then the last section, obviously you need to say, why me? Why should they choose you for this role? Sell yourself. Which of your skills and experiences align with particular items in the job description? If you get through all of these stages, you've got the application test, which I've mentioned in my previous video, but my specific tips for application tests based on my experiences are: for the situational judgment test, this is where they will give you a scenario and you have to say how you'll act. Be true to yourself. My number one tip is be true to yourself, because these tests, they know if you try and second guess the test, you're likely to come out with inconsistencies in your answer because you're not answering true to what your beliefs are. And they don't necessarily need everyone to answer in exactly the same way. That's very obvious that you're making up your answers as you go along. You need to answer about how you will actually genuinely act, because you want to make sure that you're a good fit with the company. And as I said before, they can see through it if you're not genuine with it, because they put questions in there to measure your consistency of answers. So yeah, be true to yourself in those tests. The ones where I was trying to think too hard about it, I didn't pass. And the Johnson & Johnson one, I thought, no, you know what, I'm just going to answer this how I genuinely would do it. And I passed that one. The other type of test, which can be really strange, is an abstract reasoning test. If you haven't heard of one of these before, look it up before you do any of your applications that have these in, because it's really weird. And honestly, I had no idea what they were or how to answer them. And I attended an employer-led career session that was put on, and this was with PwC, and they went through what these tests were. I had no idea. You're looking for like patterns and things. And beforehand, I couldn't understand what these kind of questions were looking for. But once I'd had it explained to me, my brain started to recognise patterns, which I just wouldn't have been able to recognise afterwards. So definitely do practice tests for these because they have them online. In general then, what can you do other than these specifics for the application process? I think one of the main things is to take advantage of all the amazing career sessions that the careers department put on. So there are careers department sessions, and then there are employer-led sessions. The careers department sessions focus on things like the CV, like the application tests, those kind of like event type things. Then the employer-led sessions can give you more of an insight into specific application processes. Again, you will learn skills that are applicable across the board. For example, like these abstract reasoning tests that I learned about at the PwC one, which were applicable in my Johnson & Johnson application. But they are slightly different because the employer-led ones will focus specifically on what is needed for that organisation, whereas the careers department will have them in more zoomed in things like a CV or like a LinkedIn profile, and you can kind of focus in on those specific elements a bit more rather than just generic tips for their application process. My next tip is to keep track of all the placements you're applying for. I think if you just go in there and start doing application here, application there, you're kind of going to lose track of it because there are quite a lot. So what I made was an Excel spreadsheet. I had a list and I gathered them from Rate My Placement and various sites of all of the roles that I wanted to apply for. And then I put all of the deadlines next to them. And then I kept kind of a track by highlighting them as to which stage I was at, whether I was waiting to hear, whether I had kind of like finished that application process, got through to the next stage, etc. Just so that it was really clear, because otherwise it's really easy to either forget where you are with one or to forget to apply to one. And especially with your favorites, you don't want to forget to apply to those. My second to last tip is to start with this all as soon as possible. Obviously this year, by the time you see this video, it may be a bit later, but if you're watching this and you're doing your applications next year or later than that, I would seriously recommend to just get started when you get back to uni for your second year. look in advance so you have a bit of an idea what's going on. So for example, if you're in first year and you're thinking of doing one in second year, take a look now at what's available. There's no harm in doing it. Obviously, don't do the application because you won't be able to do the placement, but just have a look at what's available, because it just means that you're going to be more prepared and less stressed next year when it comes around. And obviously with assignments and things, it's easier if you can kind of start this a bit earlier before all those assignments kick in. This also means that you won't get behind on any deadlines for placements that you want to apply to, and that you can prioritise them. So I would really say don't apply for the one you want the most first, because you're going to learn things along the way and you're really probably not going to get any of the first ones you apply to. So the ones that you really want, don't apply to them first, apply to them a bit later. Obviously, make sure you don't miss the deadline, but give yourself a bit of practice before you do your top ones. Finally, make sure that you keep your faculty placement manager informed of where you're at, because it's quite likely that there are previous Durham students who have been in the position you were. I know when I got my assessment centre for Johnson & Johnson, someone had just come back from their placement from Johnson & Johnson, and he could just tell me a bit more about what to expect. It's really useful to be able to talk to someone who's actually been through that process before. So if you keep your faculty placement manager involved, will be able to help you with all of that. And obviously they know a lot more about these processes than you, so they'll have useful things that they can help you out with. So that's all for this placement tips video. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions or want any specific placement videos, comment them down below. I mean, that's what I'm doing this year. I'm doing my placement, so I should be the best place to help you out with that. We will see you later. Bye.